and today I will be doing a whispered movie review of 28 Years Later. So, this was a movie that I actually watched on Friday, and I wanted to take a couple days to let it sit and think on it a little bit because it's definitely one of the most anticipated movies of the year. Definitely one of the most anticipated movies of the year. And I have a feeling that it might be a little bit more polarizing in the reviews. So I wanted to sleep on it, just give it a couple of days. And I finally came up with my official Letterboxd ranking or rating of it. But per usual, I was going to do a non-spoiler section for the review, and then about halfway through I'll do a spoiler warning and we'll talk about some of the spoilers in the film, things that I liked, things that I didn't, and just cover different aspects of the film, the writing, the directing. So if you guys are into horror movies or movies in general, I think you'll enjoy it. And if you're not into that, then hopefully the whispering will at least help you feel a little bit relaxed. So, for those of you that don't know what 28 Years Later is, it is the sequel written by Danny Boyle and Alex Garland and directed by Danny Boyle. It is the sequel to 28 Days Later, which came out in the early 2000s and was a very highly renowned infected / zombie movie that actually created a lot of the tropes / strategies for horror / zombie films when it came out. And, you know, things like The Walking Dead or The Last of Us probably wouldn't have existed, or at least existed in the way that we know them to be now, without 28 Days Later. So, this sequel is 28 Years Later, and it plays off of 28 Days Later, and to some extent 28 Weeks Later, which wasn't directed by Danny Boyle, and there was less involvement with Alex Garland and Danny Boyle in 28 Weeks Later, but it does reference it just a little bit in 28 Years Later. And this is actually the first movie of, I believe, a trilogy for 28 Years Later. So, a quick description of the film is: in 28 days it began, in 28 weeks it spread, in 28 years it evolved. 28 years since the rage virus escaped a biological weapons laboratory. Now, still in a ruthlessly enforced quarantine, some have found ways to exist amidst the infected. One such group lives on a small island connected to the mainland by a single, heavily defended causeway. When one member departs on a mission into the dark heart of the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated not only the infected, but other survivors as well. So, that is the general premise of the movie. And, I absolutely loved 28 Days Later. I thought 28 Weeks Later was fine. And 28 Years Later, I was left the film feeling a little bit confused or a little bit disappointed, because there was definitely some aspects of the film that I really liked, but others that I didn't get or didn't like nearly as much. Starting with the acting, so with the positives, we'll start there. I think the acting, the cast overall is phenomenal. In the trailers, you kind of see a father and son going on to the mainland, and that's kind of what you see in the trailer. But the two actors, so the father is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and I think he's very good as like a supporting role. And then the child actor, Alfie Williams, who plays Spike in the movie, he knocked it out of the park. He was doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the movie, and I thought he did an incredible job as I want to say he was like 14 years old, or at least his character was in the movie, but I thought he was really, really good. I thought Jodie Comer, who plays the mother, I thought she was also great, playing a character that's got some complexities and has a unique situation, I guess you could say, in the film. And then a more familiar actor that everyone probably knows from something, Ralph Fiennes, is in the film, and I thought he did great as a supporting role as well. And I'd say the last significant actor in the film was Edvin Riding, who plays a Swedish soldier in the film, and he brought a lot of really good comedic timing and a couple of really good iconic scenes or memorable moments. So overall, I think the main cast of this film did an incredible job. I think the acting was great. I had no issues with the acting whatsoever. But really strong cast overall. As for the editing, so if you didn't know, 28 Years Later is a film that's shot entirely on the iPhone. And when you say shot on the iPhone, it's not like a, hidden footage movie or anything like that. And it's not just shot on iPhones, like walking around on iPhones. They have all sorts of other equipment as well. But they used iPhones to shoot the movie with their added equipment. And then in post for the editing, I thought they did some really interesting things. For the editing, they spliced in a lot of footage from other things, or other moments. So some of the spliced editing I thought really added a lot to the film. There's moments where it was kind of like a thermo shot of the infected at night, like moving around or eating a deer, things like that. But I thought that was really effective and really creepy. And then there were some other spliced edits that were like medieval archers or medieval helmets that I thought were a little bit less effective, but I definitely understood what they were going for. So I thought the editing overall, for the most part, was good. One thing that I didn't love was in the film, the most used weapon is bow and arrow, because these people that are living on the island that go to the mainland, they don't have like lots of resources or guns or anything, so it's a lot of bow and arrows. And some of the times when Alfie Williams' character Spike or his father are shooting arrow at an infected, there was like an editing technique that was used about half the time, where it would, like, as they shot it and hit the infected in like the chest or the head, it would like slow down and spin a little bit, and I didn't really like that. They were definitely trying some unique styles for editing. The other half of the time, the arrows would just shoot and it would, go through the infected, and that would be it. And I thought it just flowed a lot nicer there, so I didn't love that kind of slowed down, move around energy for the bow and arrow shots. But overall, I thought the editing was very good. And the sound design and the score is phenomenal. I really think that the sound design and the music in the background really helped carry the film in certain areas where there's some moments where the music gets incredibly tense, and the score in the background really matches what's going on. There's other times where it turns a little bit more heartfelt, a little bit more serious. Um, and I just think overall the score and the music worked really well in the film. I really enjoyed that. I also like that they did actually include the song from the trailer. So, if you didn't watch the trailer for 28 Years Later, it's like the old-timey war song, where it's like boots, boots, boots on the ground, walking, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. But there's like this boots song that's very like off-putting, and I thought it might just be something that they're using for the trailer to like get people in. But they actually used it in the film as well, and I really enjoyed that too. As for the plot and the story as a whole, I'm not going to get into spoilers yet, but I would say it wasn't exactly what I expected, and it's not that it's like bad, it's just not what I expected going into the movie. I would say about the first half of the film is as advertised through the trailer and kind of what I expected for an infected 28 days, 28 weeks, 28 years later type film. The first half very much felt connected with that universe. And then it switches a little bit. It switches into kind of more of like a coming of age story, and this 14-year-old kind of finding out or realizing things about his father and mother, and coping with things that happened. But it becomes like a much more heartfelt coming of age story that happens to have like infected or zombies in it, but the zombies aren't like the focal point. And then Ralph Fiennes' character comes in and really plays on that theme, that I did like. But there was a couple moments in between that just seemed a lot more comedic as well, so it kind of jumped between different tones, which a movie can definitely do. But I think there's just a lot of different tones or things that the movie was going for, and some of it worked well, some of it didn't work nearly as well. And then we will get to this in the spoilers, but the final scene of the movie, which is setting up the next movie, it just didn't work for me at all. So we'll cover that in a little bit too, but overall, I would say it is still worth seeing in theaters. I do think it's more polarizing. I've seen some people say this is a 5 out of 5 movie. This is one of the best movies of the year. This is one of the most unique best movies in a long time. I've also seen some people say that this is like not what they wanted at all. It was a missed opportunity. It had potential, but it didn't get there. So there's definitely mixed reviews for it, and I would say I fall somewhere in the middle. My ultimate Letterboxd score for it ended up being a 3.5 out of 5, which ends up being like a slightly above average movie, or like an average but rewatchable film for me. So yeah, so I would still recommend it if you liked 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later. I think you are always going to go see this, but I would say go ahead and see it. I think it's worth seeing, and if you haven't seen those other films, I don't think you necessarily have to watch them for this to be rewarding for you to understand what's going on in this film. I think this can function as a standalone film without those previous movies. Those movies, I think, are, good context, but not 100% needed. At the beginning of the film, they do like a breakdown of kind of the lore or the world building for the 28 later universe. So if you haven't seen those and you want to see this, I would say it's still fine to go see it in theaters as well. So awesome. Okay. So this is where I'm going to let you go. Was where if you haven't seen the movie, I would recommend, signing off now and going and see the movie and then coming back. But for those of you that have watched the film, I want to get into more specifics about what I liked and what I didn't like. So, as I mentioned, for kind of my expectations entering the film, the trailer got me incredibly hyped for the movie. I was very excited to go see it. And then the pre-reviews from critics were also like very, very positive. I think on Rotten Tomatoes I had like a 95% when I saw the movie. And it's come down a little bit into like the high 80s. But I was just like, oh wow, everyone's recommending this. Everyone likes it. I'm excited to see it. And it ended up being much more of a mixed bag. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of things that I liked. There's a lot of things that I think worked well. The acting was definitely one of them. I thought the child actor in Alfie Williams was amazing. And then I also really liked the world building and the lore of the Rage virus and the infected. It was really cool to see, years and years following 28 days later and 28 weeks later. And I thought that the film really captured how life of the infected and those quarantines still go on and evolve through time. I think this movie definitely accomplished that well. Additionally, I thought the island itself in the movie was such a cool premise and such a cool concept, because essentially in the film, there's an island and there's like a lone coral road or like a bridge that only reveals itself when it's in low tide, and then it disappears or kind of like goes under the water completely during high tide, which creates a really interesting dynamic of you only have certain times of day and you only have so much time where you can go to the mainland and come back, and that definitely plays a role in the movie. I do think my favorite scene in the whole movie is, once again, we're going into spoilers now, but perhaps my favorite scene in the whole movie is when one of the new, like, alpha infected is, like, running and chasing the father and son through, like, the knee-high water back to the island. And it really felt like it could have been like a great climax in some versions of this scripted movie, but this actually happened about 1/3 or half the way through the movie, where the father and son, they go to the mainland, they kind of get into a situation where they're like trapped in a house because they had to run away from infected, and now they're trying to get back to the island, and the father and son are like, okay, it's not quite low tide yet, but it's low enough where we can get there. So they're running across this bridge in like knee-high water, and this alpha infected is like sprinting after them in the water, and it was incredibly tense, incredibly cool shot. I really, really loved that scene where they just kind of get out of the pathway of the alpha infected back close enough to the island where like the defense tower can shoot down the alpha infected and save them. So I actually really enjoyed the first half of this film. And then, as I mentioned, it kind of takes a shift where it becomes more of that coming of age story where Alfie, the premise is essentially Alfie wants to bring his sick mother to the mainland to meet with an alleged doctor, where earlier in the film, Alfie and his father are like out in the mainland, and Alfie sees a fire, and and he tells his dad, like, oh, what's that? And he goes, it's a fire. He goes, oh, is that like someone we know? And he goes, no. But later on, it kind of reveals that he did know who was there, and it was a man played by Ralph Fiennes, who was previously a doctor. And since Alfie's mother has been having like, hot sweats and not being able to get out of bed and migraines and forgetting what's going on, lots of confusion, blood dripping from her nose sometimes. Alfie's like, I want to get my mom to the doctor, and he tells his dad, I want to take her to the doctor, and he essentially says, no, he's not a doctor anymore. He's not a doctor anymore. He's a crazy guy. We saw him like burning people and waving at us. He's insane now. But Alfie, once he catches his father cheating on his mother after like a party, because once Alfie and his father get back from the mainland, it's like a celebration for Alfie because it was his first time out on the mainland, and his father gets drunk and Alfie sees him like cheating on his mother, so his relationship with his father kind of deteriorates, and he eventually sets like a different building on fire, causing the people from the defense tower to come and throw water on it and leave the defense tower, so that he and his mother can get out to the mainland to go see the doctor. And one of my issues with this was, Alfie had just faced a near-death experience with his father, who's a lot more experienced on the mainland. They like almost died multiple times, but he like had no second thoughts about bringing his mother, who's sick, to the mainland without his father, and with him only going one time. And some could say that this is easy to look past given the situation with his father and the circumstances of his mother's health and their desperation. But it's just something where I was like, even if you're desperate, that just seems really stupid, or really risky to go out to the mainland without any sort of assistance. And then from that point onward, the movie tone switches entirely from like a gritty horror movie to more of that lighthearted comedic, specifically when the Swedish soldier, that is a tongue twister, a Swedish soldier shows up, and then Ralph Fiennes comes in a little bit later on as well. But the tones between that of like the comedic and the heartfelt kind of goes back and forth. And I did like both sections of the movie individually. I just don't know how well they worked like in conjunction with each other. So the tonalities of the different sections were just interesting to me, and I felt like they tried to do a lot between those scenes as well. There's also an infected birthing scene that caught me off guard. I wouldn't say it was like a bad scene, but there's definitely some issues I had with it. So like the infected, presumably impregnated by like the alpha infected, somehow the two infected create a baby that's a normal human, not infected, which, some people might have looked into and be like, oh, it's possible because of this and that, but to me it just didn't make a whole lot of sense as to how that was possible. But looking past that, Alfie's mother, who's like confused, goes onto like this broken down subway train where the infected mother's giving birth, and Alfie's mom like holds her hands while she's giving birth and helps like her give birth to the baby. And then afterwards the infected mother like screams and gets shot by the Swedish soldier. But I was just confused as to like why the infected didn't try to kill her, whether she was in so much pain, and then after she gave birth she like went back to her like primal instincts or something. But that scene was another issue that I had with it. And then after that, I did really like the section of the movie with Ralph Fiennes. I thought his 3 to 5 scenes that he was in was just incredibly interesting and incredibly cool, both due to the set design and the eye-popping visuals, as well as like the deeper concepts that are explored. And this is the part of the film where they talk about this Latin phrase, memento mori, which means remember you must die. And Ralph Fiennes' character essentially explains in this section that everyone dies, and they talk about death and coping with death and preparing for death, kind of as a overall theme of the movie and kind of the series as a whole. But I thought it was really beautiful the way that section was handled, where the Swedish soldier Eric gets killed by the Alpha infected, and Ralph Fiennes' character, the Doctor, essentially it's revealed that he's not insane. He's just a doctor living out in the wild, and he has all these structures of bones and skulls, and he grabs the skull of Eric and like throws it in the fire and burns off all the skin and hair and stuff. And he has this skull, and he tells Alfie like, go ahead and find a place for him. And Alfie sets him on this tower of other skulls. But then the Doctor looks at Spike's mother, as that was the whole point of them going to the mainland, and it's revealed that his mother has cancer, and she doesn't have much longer left to live. The Doctor essentially says, she could die anytime, but she's gonna die soon. And then because of his view on the world and Spike's mother wanting to die peacefully and not wanting to die in pain or suffering or in a situation where Alfie is put into more pain, they essentially quietly agree that it's best to have her die in a peaceful way now rather than later. And I did understand the sentiment, but it did also feel kind of sudden for her passing. I don't think there was a whole lot of closure for Alfie. But they essentially tranquilize Alfie so he relaxes and goes to sleep. And then the Doctor does the same to the mother, and then off screen goes through that same process of burning the body, doing the skull, and he brings Spike's mother's skull back to Alfie and says this is the best one, this is the most special, find the best spot for it. And Alfie climbs up the bone structure and essentially sets his mother's skull on the top and looks out at the sun that's rising up because it's morning again. And I thought the score and just the process going through that I thought worked really well. I thought it was a pretty good climax to the film, after wishing / hoping that the running through the water on the coral bridge, after wanting that to kind of be the climax, I thought this recovered well and did a good job. But essentially after that, the Doctor and Alfie avoid another encounter with the Alpha infected by hiding underground in this metal crate, and the Alpha infected kind of breaks into the ground, but they stun him or they tranquilize him again and then get out of there. And Alfie gets back to the island, but he doesn't stay this time. He just goes there with the baby, leaves it with a note to his father that essentially explains what happens, says that he's going to stay on the mainland, but also explain that, hey, this baby was born from an infected mother, but she's not infected, the baby's not infected. So I presume in the next movie they're going to be like taking care of this baby, and we'll kind of see where that goes. But I really like the movie up to this point. I would say up to this point, it was a 3.5, maybe even pushing a 4 out of 5 for me. But then we get to the last scene that I just did not like at all. This is the Jimmy scene, which you'll probably hear a lot about in reviews, as well as if you watch it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the final scene in this film shows Alfie like cooking out in the mainland by himself, kind of becoming that man that his father wanted to be, being very self-sufficient, having like his own purpose that he wants to go through on the mainland. But infected start chasing him, so he's running away. And then this character, Jimmy, shows up, who is referenced at the very beginning of the movie as a child when the initial outbreak happened. Where at the beginning of the film, Jimmy is like a kid, probably like 8 or 9, maybe a little bit younger. But he and all these other kids are watching the Teletubbies when the initial outbreak happens, and he's like traumatized. He sees a lot of other kids like get killed by the infected, and then he's like running. He sees his mom get infected. He runs into the church where his father is like a priest, and the priest, his father's like a little bit of a crazy person, where he's like, oh, it's the day of reckoning, gives him like the cross and tells him to hide or like run or not be afraid. I forget what exactly, but he essentially, the father, like allows the infected to like infect himself, so, which is very traumatizing. But then later on in the movie, you see like a man hanging upside down when Alfie or Spike and his father are on the mainland, and Jimmy's carved into his back, and the father's like, oh, he must have done something. Someone did this on purpose. And then later on, you see his name like on a couple buildings on the side of them. So like Jimmy's like this character that's obviously going to get explored more in the next film. But the end of the movie felt super cartoonish because Jimmy's essentially sitting there as Spike is being chased. He's like, hey, there's a lot of them, you want me to jump in? And then he and like his friends come in and help him. But it's like all sorts of super colorful, like over the top kills, and they're all wearing like different colored jumpsuits, and it's just very like goofy, cartoonish to me. And the original climax of like that heartfelt, thoughtful, relatable moment was kind of like ruined for me a little bit by the extremely different tone in the final scene. So I really didn't like that. I imagine that the tone of the next movie is going to be very different just based off this last scene. But yeah, the last scene didn't work for me at all. With that being said, there was a lot of things that I did really enjoy about the movie. And upon like a rewatch of this film, I could see it going either up or down a 0.5, so end up between like 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. And I think some people will absolutely love this. You may absolutely love this when you watch it, or you may absolutely hate it. I think it's a very risky film. I think they tried to do a lot. I think they did something very unique just based off of the editing and the story and the world building. But ultimately, I think I'll probably fall somewhat in the middle of those polarizing takes, and I think a 3.5 out of 5 is where I currently sit. I'd be curious to watch it again and just see kind of if my opinion changes at all, because I'm still clearly kind of collecting my thoughts. It's such a bizarre kind of movie. But I think 3.5 out of 5 is my final answer for now, for 28 years later. So, okay, thank you for tuning in. I know that this was a little bit of a longer review because there was a lot But I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a lot of rambling and whispering, but I hope you can get something out of it. And if you enjoy the reviews, let me know. I know the movie reviews are probably a little bit less popular on the channel, but I really enjoy doing them. And for any of you movie buffs out there, if you like them, please let me know. And I'll probably be doing another one of these in the next 3 to 4 days, because I'll be seeing another new released movie. It's actually an early screening. I'll be seeing an early screening of another movie on Monday night. So, thanks for tuning in. And I will talk to you guys again soon.